It is the Anfield Wrap in our whole new setup. It's the same setup. We've had the studio for ages, but we're doing it very, very differently. I've got John Gibbons, I've got Stu Wright, I've got Beth Lindop, and we are in association with Peloton, who are the official conditioning and strength partner, cardio and strength partner of Liverpool. And it is fantastic to be partnering with them. We were with them all the way through last season as well. Beth was there when I did the cycle at the end of the season because Liverpool are champions. And I'll say it again, if Liverpool are top at Christmas, and if we can sort this counter-attacking out, you never know. If Liverpool are top at Christmas, I will, in this setup, do the whole of a show on the Peloton, and I'm looking forward to that because I'm looking forward to the Reds being great. And John, last season as well with Peloton, we set ourselves a couple of tasks. One of them was to cycle all the way to Istanbul.
Yeah, one of the nice things is about the app is that you can set up these groups. So we've got a tour group on there, a Tour Peloton Club hashtag it is called, and yeah, there's a few of us on there, and you can do little tasks together. So it was actually someone at Peloton's idea, but maybe combine it with Istanbul. So we collectively cycled the distance to Istanbul, and then Peloton sent it was a random person, but it just so happened to randomly be the person who did the most distance as well, which felt pretty good. Someone a lady who lives up at Anfield, the Stones. Well, she lives near the Goodison, but she lives in L4.
Goodison don't think anymore, John. It's the Hill Dickinson these days.
That is true. So now we're nearest the men's stadium back is Anfield, so that's nice. But yeah, sent her a Sound Liverpool shirt. So we're going to try and do more of that, make more use of the group and stuff like that. This year we do classes, together, where a few of us will jump on and do some of the live classes together. So the group's been really nice, but more challenges next season. Get you on the bike.
There we are. That's what you want, to get you on the bike indeed. So do check it all out, and we'll be doing it through the course of the year anyway, all the way back to Friday night. It's now Monday. Have you recovered?
Yeah, just about. But I've been daydreaming there because I've just got visions of, can we have a live audience for the Peloton episode with you? Do you know what I mean? So
I was hoping because he said Christmas. I wondered if you're going to do the Santa uniform.
I was going to say I feel like you've got to take it up a gear.
Yes.
Because
I'll wear me Japanese Santa mask that I wear for the quiz.
I wanted to get hold of one of the blue Santa things that they do the Blues wear for Santa Dash.
Yeah. Maybe I'll do that as well.
Have someone like dressed up as a reindeer.
Trying to talk about the football here.
We've got ideas. You've got a round table.
Yeah, it's my fault.
Have someone dressed up as a reindeer in front of the Peloton, and then you look like Santa, and there's someone pulling you along.
All the way through?
All the way through.
Someone's miming pulling me now. That sounds more exhausting than doing the bike, I'll be honest.
Live audience there, cheering you on or heckling.
All right, write that down, Patch. Come on. The match on Friday. The match on Friday.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you what, they picked the right game, didn't they, to start the season on Sky Sports. What a game. It was so entertaining. I mean, it's the type of game that you pay your money for, isn't it? You know what I mean? I know we'll have issues that we want to talk about how the game unfolded and control and all that, which we'll discuss later, but just in terms of sheer entertainment value and the way, we all bounced out of that ground afterwards after having the Chiesa moment, and then topped off by Salah getting his custom first goal of the season on the opening day. It's everything that you want. It was the payoff we've all been waiting for with Chiesa for all of last season. It felt like that song now finally has a purpose, has a point to it. You know what I mean? Apart from being incredible. I'm still shaking talking about that game.
Did you believe, or was it the point where your belief began to ebb?
I think you've always got to believe in Liverpool at Anfield, particularly on a night like Friday, which was obviously so sort of emotionally charged, and it was a special night from beginning to end. But I did think certainly the body language in that initial aftermath of that second Menio goal, they all looked a little bit dejected for a couple of minutes, and you did think, is this going to set the tone? Obviously, it was 3 years ago now. 3 years ago when they went to Fulham on the opening day, and that obviously ended in a draw, and I guess set the tone for a really difficult campaign by Liverpool standards anyway. So there was a moment where I did start to doubt it, but you always,
I thought, so when it goes in at 2-2, I completely agree with the body language, and I thought, fuck this. I heard you on the post-match audio, John, you said that you'd stopped. What changed for me was there was a couple of minutes where they went from looking like the fittest side I'd ever seen in my life to I thought Bournemouth looked like, oh my God, this is dead hard. They looked really tired, and it was just at the moment where I was on the verge of saying, I think we're going to score here, that we scored, if you know what I mean. Like at the point where my belief had bounced back 100%, I was up there at the moment when he just sort of sticks in the back of the net. I thought they looked like, that we put everything in to get back. I've seen it in the past. You put everything in to get back to 2-2, and then suddenly everyone's a bit like, oh God, what do we do now?
Yeah, and we've seen it so many times. We saw it so many times last season with Liverpool, where it felt like they'd ceded some control and they dropped off, and then they end up getting punished. But then that, for the opposition who've worked so hard to get back into the game is you know, is a bit of a blow in a sense, because then all of a sudden, you know, the momentum's going to shift back to Liverpool, and that's what it did. But Arne Slot had said before the game, you know, he made a point in his press conference to say how intense Bournemouth are. I think he might have actually called them the most intense side in the league, and they were. But obviously that can take its toll, and it did.
They're a unique proposition, John, as I say, and that's, I think that one of the things that they do, because they just keep coming at you, is they do knock the belief out of you a bit in a way.
Yeah, I mean, the manager made that point before the game. We talked about playing them last season and said, we were 3-0 up at half-time, and then he said, in Holland, when you're 3-0 up at half-time, you win 5-0, because the other team just sort of pack in, and he was like, almost, it was early on in his reign, but you almost couldn't believe how much Bournemouth went at them, sort of second half, really, and, you know, that was a game last year that wasn't as comfortable, even the first half. The 3-0 sort of makes it sound. So they're a tough team to play against. They do keep going, and for all the changes and for all the problems they've had in the summer, they've actually kept a large portion of that attacking talent, not least the guy who scores twice. And so the tricky opponents, did we make them more tricky? Or did we conspire to make them, you know, to create situations where they were more tricky? I mean, we'll come on to that, but almost certainly yes. But they are a tough opponents, and first game back for Liverpool, you know, with the changes that we made as well, it was never going to be perfect.
The Salah goal is the greatest goal in football, John. We've talked about this many times. The goal that takes you from 1 to 2 in injury time. The one that is just unanswerable. There's not enough time left in the match to answer it. I love that he does it. You can almost see the cogs wearing. Yeah. Firstly, he's running so hard. You know, it's the 94th minute, and he runs from right wing to left wing to pick up a bit of a, if we're honest, a bit of a punt into space. He does that, and then it's almost like he's so fit, he can switch his brain back on, and you almost get to see the moment when you watched it back where he goes from, no, I won't go the corner. I just absolutely loved it, and I love that he got his moment, and obviously we got to see everything it meant to him.
Yeah, he did, and it is a great goal, and he's a bit of a specialist in them. I mean, the best one was Man United, wasn't it? Yeah. It takes it from 1 to 2, and the share comes off, and Alisson's first to him, and that's the, you know, the ultimate one that sort of springs to mind. But he is sort of good at that goal that just sort of ends it. He's a mic dropping footballer, isn't he? And that's what he does. But the goal itself is great. What he's brilliant at is shooting at the perfect time, and I think that's something that I think develops as you get older. I watched quite a bit of football over the weekend, and you see in sort of other places. I thought Andy Gordon was terrific for Newcastle, but what he hasn't quite mastered yet because of his age, and because I think he's been moved around, is that you get a lot of shots blocked. And I think that's something that, so he's moving well, he's always pushing, like Salah does, but a lot of shots sort of blocked, where Salah just wait to go, boom, there's the gap, and it's past it, and the keeper's not expecting it and stuff like that.
Good comparison on that, I think a really good comparison actually, is when he's flying, Saka gets those shots away and they go in. When he's not flying, I thought he had a couple yesterday against United where he doesn't shoot when he could, or it's there for him and one gets blocked late on. But I think Saka's a brilliant player. Yeah. But as you say, he's still a younger player, and just having that innate. And as I say, when Saka's flying, you sort of know he is because the blocks stop happening. And I think it's a really good point.
Even for Salah, when he's getting frustrated with himself and he's maybe trying to push it too much, then you see a lot of block shots and things like that. But when he's up, like he felt at that moment, you know, he's got himself into the box, and it's just all, when it's very natural for him. I think he can overthink it sometimes, Salah, if he's not scored in a game, but in that moment where he probably thinks, oh, it's 3-2 and I'm just going to make it 4 now, and he just sort of looked dead relaxed, and he just strokes it. And, you know, it's not the most powerful hit you've seen of the weekend, but I think he's just smart in terms of when he does that, and it's a proper Salah goal, and I loved it.
Coming off the first home game, go on.
I thought he needed it. To be honest, I think he really needed it. You know, he's missed a couple of penalties lately, and you know what they've all been through. We've seen the outpouring of emotion from him afterwards. I think it's been weighing heavy on him, and I think there was only one thing in his mind, that he was going to get that shot away by hook or by crook. He was going to get that shot away, and I think you saw it in the level of his celebration afterwards. What it meant to him. If anything, I felt it was more of a celebration. There was more emotion in it than what is typical from Salah, particularly, you know, when it's the 4th goal in the game as well.
Van Dijk has a little moment with him. I don't know if it ever came over on the telly or people noticed in the ground. So he scores, they all celebrate, he has his own moment, the way in which he does. It's interesting, Van Dijk waited for him to have a little, just to sort of say something to him, arm around him. I thought that was really interesting, because you don't often see that. You know, often it's put back to the centre circle, and we all know our jobs, certainly where Virgil and Mo are concerned. I think last season, so coming out of last season, first home game against Brentford, it was gone to win 2-0 at Ipswich, won 2-0 against Brentford, and I saw Dan Austin in the Glen Book, and Dan was like, well, I think we're going to keep doing the business. Could be pretty controlled and businesslike and a bit dull. This season's one is the absolute opposite of that, Stu. I think, though, you know, it was last season's greatest trick to control, and it is something that, you know, the manager's asked about it afterwards. I think it is something they will be, whatever he's saying in public, it's something they will be thinking about in private.
Yeah, I think the most important thing at the start of the season, I always think in the first few games, there's potential issues that you need to work through. Because no matter how many pre-season games you have, you can't really test everything until you've got the intensity of a proper Premier League game.
Yeah. And my God, we had that.
We absolutely had that against a team that wouldn't stop. And I just think the most important thing is obviously just getting the 3 points in those first 2 or 3 games, just racking up the points and then working through your issues. But I think, you know, undeniably we've seen in pre-season and then we've seen again the other day that there are issues that, you know, we haven't got the same amount of control. We're not maybe set up in the transition as smartly as we have been previously. Maybe I'm a bit of a, I don't know, I might be a bit of a full-back fridge, but like I'm very much a traditionalist where I think, well, if both full-backs are going, I'm concerned. You know, we're on the attack. I like it more when one goes and the other tucks in a little bit.
I thought there was more of that in this, though. I thought that, for instance, at times, though, Kirkes was more reserved, the average position as Frimpong higher.
But it's interesting you mentioned like Frimpong and Kirkes, because that was obviously earlier on in the game. Yeah. But, you know, towards the end, I felt, you know, there was times there where both are pushing on. And I think if you're going to have both full-backs pushing on, and you haven't totally got set and got them pinned, got Bournemouth pinned inside the penalty area, and you haven't got maybe a couple of midfielders just outside it.
2 holders, yeah.
Yeah, just anchoring that and keeping them in almost like in that semicircle. If you're not set like that, then my God, you need to be fast. If you're not going to be goal side of any of their players, basically apart from your 2 centre-halves, then you need to be quick on the transition getting back. And unfortunately, you know, that's not where we are at the moment. Robertson's not as quick as he used to be. Gomez isn't as quick as Ando when he was playing fullbacks early isn't quick. You know, I think that you've got to be very, very confident in your ability to be able to make up the ground going backwards if you are caught. And Liverpool have got to think about that. Obviously, there's the issues with, you know, Gravenberch's not there yet. You know, everyone's not up to speed. McAllister's maybe not as fit as we will see him in the coming weeks. But there's work to do. There's stuff to think about there.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with Stu, and I think the first few weeks, it's so hard to gauge, is it just teething problems or is this something that's going to dog a team for the whole season? And I think if you look at Arsenal, for example, yesterday against Manchester United, it's like the inverse of that really, because defensively they were good, although they did concede chances in that first half in particular, but defensively they were fairly solid. But going forward, you know, they looked, despite having spent, you know, big money on a striker.
Utterly toothless.
Yeah, it's completely toothless. But is that just because, you know, it's the first couple of weeks of the season that, you know, the players, some of the new signings are still bedding in? You know, they will take those 3 points from yesterday, and they'll say, right, that's a massive 3 points because we didn't play particularly well. We were probably the second best team in that game, but we got the 3 points, and that's all that matters. And I think for Liverpool, it's maybe a similar thing at this moment in time. Is yes, there are concerns, definitely. I think not having Gravenberch is massive. And I also don't think you can sort of overstate the impact of Alexis McAllister when he's fully fit, and I don't think he's anywhere near fully fit and fully match sharp at the moment. So I think once he is back into his groove and Gravenberch's there, it's a slightly different proposition. I also think as well Konate is such an interesting player, because I think he goes through phases where, you know, there was a point last season when he was phenomenal. He was brilliant, and it felt like everything he did was brilliant. But he also has spells where he doesn't look quite right. He looks a little bit shaky. He looks a little bit like he could make a mistake at any moment. And I thought on Friday night that was it was indicative of the fact he's maybe in one of those phases at the minute. So I think, again, whether it'll be a long-term thing, I'm not sure. But I think it's so hard to judge this early on in a season if it's something that is a real issue or something that could be quite easily ironed out.
It's a very small sample size at this point in time, obviously. But, you know, I noticed Andrew Beasley put out a little stat there as well about the transitions, if you like. Last season, in the whole of last season, Liverpool conceded 2 goals on quick counter-attacks, quick breaks, fast breaks. What up to define is that, well, in one game, we've done that on Friday night. So, you know, it's undeniable that there's something to have a look at there. Konate as well. You know, I totally agree with you on Konate, because I think Konate is such an interesting player. He can be phenomenal, but he's got such a range. I've never seen a range of performance, you know, capability of a player, because when he's bad, he's really bad. But I do feel a little bit sorry for him, just in terms of the exposure that him and Van Dijk faced a little bit.
Yeah.
And there's something, John, in it. I always thought August would be a bit mad this season, partially the nature of the opponents. You know, Newcastle next Monday night will be the most like St James's Park has ever been like, Goodison, that you could possibly conceive of. Bournemouth are a certain thing, the changes that we've made, and obviously the emotion that's rattling around the background. So I think it is difficult to judge. That said, you know, you do want to, you got to play the hand you're dealt. Maybe we're riding the wave of it a little bit, but that will come with diminishing returns.
Yeah, it will. It will. I think, you know, you made the point on Gravenberch. I actually think it's been really underplayed. We need to talk about that Andrew Beasley point. He starts 37 league games last year, and the one he misses is Chelsea away, which is like, you know, whatever. So if you're saying, well, we were like this last year, and then we've been like this in the first game, well, for me, the biggest difference is he's not there. And people could say he's not a traditional number 6. You know, he's not exactly... And
he wasn't the Charity Shield either.
No, he wasn't. He wasn't the Charity Shield, and that's another one. And so I think... I'm not looking too much into it until he's back in there, because for me that's sort of the greatest change. I take it there's been other changes around the pitch. There's 2 new full-backs. You know, there's Florian Wirtz, who's a different type of midfielder to what we had, and you know, with the front 3 press, it's sort of quite how they wanted to. But I think the biggest difference is him. If he comes back and we're still looking like that, then okay. Then you know And listen, you can make an argument, well, there shouldn't be this big, massive drop-off when one sort of player comes out, and I accept that as well. But then on Beth's point, it's McAllister coming in and a half-fit one as well. And so I think if you've either got a fully fit McAllister or a Gravenberch who's absolutely, you know, pairing as he was sort of last season, I think we look better in these moments. But I do also think as well that you can drive yourself mad with risk and mistakes and things like that. You're going to give the ball away sometimes. Like, your solution can't be, well, don't give the ball away.
Well, that's sort of become Arsenal's. Is never to take as few risks as humanly possible.
But that's a risk.
Yeah.
So if they'd have conceded in the last few minutes, which they nearly did, the ball's bouncing around. If it bounces to a United player and goes in,
could have been a penalty, etc., etc.
Or Harry Maguire's massive head. Do you know what I mean? When they bring him on.
Yeah.
The Arsenal fans aren't saying we should have defended that moment better. They're saying, well, why have we gone for it at 1-0? Why have we just sat back? So not taking risks is a risk, and so it's all about the balance. But you know, balance can be tricky to find, especially when there's another team who was sort of running at you. So, you know, I'm okay with how we're playing. I think the Szoboszlai flick is in that moment is maybe the wrong thing to do. But you're looking for the first one. You know, Salah's trying to pop one over the top from a corner. You say we don't want him to do that. You know, go back to your defender. Come on.
No,
do you know what I mean?
They've got to do that. You want to see them do that, but you just want them to be a little bit smart in how they're set. It's a little nuanced adjustments, isn't it? Just in terms of a couple of players just being goal side instead of being absolutely all on the front foot. You know what I mean? But I think they'll work it out.
Yeah.
I think within 2 or 3 games they'll have worked it out. And the important thing is, in that 2 or 3 games, rack up the points.
But also, it's also one of those where you'd also a bit like, look at the video. You've got the video, you can go and sit down with them and go, lads, the same thing they were saying on Sky, I can say to you, I'm just going to stick up for you on Sky, but let's have a chat about it now. Yeah. There is a thing, I think, with the Beth you mentioned there about Arsenal, you know, it's 1 goal from a set piece, don't even create anything from open play. Chelsea don't score, don't create much. I watched that game, I thought it was dreadful. Newcastle, playing against 10 men, these are the other Champions League teams. City looked like an attacking force, and the big man looked like himself.
He did, yeah, and I think, you know, for all of the talk about new strikers and new attacking players coming into the league, Haaland is still the main man. And, you know, even last season, he obviously misses a significant spell through injury, and he's still right up there in the goal scoring chart. So, you know, if he can stay fit and he can keep firing in the way that we know that he can, then City, you know, they can't be discounted. And they've done some great business, not just this summer, but, you know, going back to January as well. You know, Marmoush, did he start?
To the start, no, comes on. But they've got him.
But they've got him, and he's a great player. Reinders looks, unfortunately, like a fantastic.
Looks like a City player,
signing.
Is my biggest worry.
Yeah.
I think he'll have strengths and weaknesses, but he already looks like a City player.
Yeah, Cherky obviously gets his goal as well. So I think City, you know, they might not quite be the formidable force in terms of the winning absolutely every game, you know, with the relentlessness that we've seen them do in the past, but they're still a real threat. And I think, you know, it's such a cliche, but the hardest thing to do in football is score goals, and they score, 4 on Saturday, and make it look quite easy. So they are probably still Liverpool's biggest threat, as much as Arsenal, I think, have done some some good business, and defensively still look, very good.
In the call letter today, John, the subs, the manager says afterwards Frimpong had a little bit of a problem. I think we were all a bit confused at the time because he hadn't looked like he had a little bit of an issue. And I think he also explains he'd have liked Joe Gomez to have had a bit more training time. And all of this is perfectly reasonable. And you want the manager, certainly first game of the season, to be guided by the sports science. Let's be clear about this. God, it didn't half hurt at the time. Again, referencing the pink, I loved Dan Austin's lineup. There were 4 lads on the bench he'd rather see come on and play right back. And Endo really made me laugh, and it just looked hard for Endo. And it's one of those, isn't it? Sometimes when you watch football and you think, if he does this, the worst case scenario is this, and then you just watch the worst case scenario play out, and that's the thing that drives you mad from time to time.
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? Subs are tough because, Endo's been a good sub for the manager, so far, and in a variety of positions, and so he probably thinks, well, that's the safest bet, in that situation. He's looking at Gomez, who was probably only on the bench in case of an emergency, and he's like, well, is this enough of an emergency? We're 2-0 up in the game, and so he's probably thinking, well, Jones feels a little bit more of a risk in that position, and those a little bit more solid. I'll put him on and see how we go, and then if I have to move things around, I will. But Endo just couldn't get to grips with it at all, and whether it was the position or whether he was just having a bad night or whether it was a combination of all of them. Obviously, he looked a lot better when he went into midfield, so it suggests there was an element of the position, but it just didn't look right at all, and then they sensed it, I think, and they thought that this guy looks a bit uncomfortable here. Let's just
certainly after the first goes in, they're almost like, this is our way home now.
We'll just run at him, and he doesn't sort of look right at all, and then it spooked the rest of the back line a little bit as well, I think, which is what happens. Is so that sub was sort of the biggest issue. Taking Ekitike off was a problem because there was then a big gap.
Yeah.
You saw the benefit. I mean, he played really well, but you saw the benefits of just having a number 9 in that way that we haven't really for a while. A little while had someone who could both dominate that space but also be a really good footballer. We've either sort of had one or the other, really. So to have both was a real, like, oh, this is great, isn't it? Isn't football simple sometimes? So Ekitike going off was a bit of a problem for us because it just seemed to make everything harder, and then you got the right back sort of issues as well, and so but like I say, I want to stick up for the manager a little bit because that could just happen sometimes, and sometimes you can just throw a fella on and he's just rubbish, and you think, well I wasn't expecting that. He's a good footballer, and it's just sort of not happening for him, and so I will stick up for the manager a little bit because I don't think, although I take Dan's point, I don't think any of us were expecting quite what we saw, including him.
I think the other thing that then undoes the manager in a way, or makes you go, what was he thinking in the way, is that Gomez comes on and Gomez is great. Like, it really, so he does the thing to fix the thing, and you're a bit like, come on. But I'll say again, if he's been told, listen, this lad's only done 2 or 3 days, you don't want to be giving him more than 20 minutes. It might even be that he was told, do us a favour, don't bring him on at all, by the sports science people.
That would have been the ideal.
Yeah, then, and he's got to work with that information, whereas right at that point, I want to be really clear about where my chimpanzee was, which was spinning me round on his finger like this, and that's not helpful in the immediate aftermath.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I agree with John there. I think it would have been less risky to bring Endo on and put him in goal than it would be to put him at right back in the grand scheme of things. Jones would have been the obvious shout. I just think what you were saying there about maybe you thought that was a bigger risk, but at least we know that Jones has got the legs, to be able to get back. And if you're playing Endo there, he's going to be stranded, particularly if you're asking him to bomb on. I mean, I don't know if that was the instruction to go and do that like Frimpong, but he certainly took that. You know what I mean?
I think if I say they were enjoying themselves a little bit, when there's the first 3 or 4 minutes after the subs, we changed the shape, by the way, which wasn't much discussed because it's about to just go to shit because of positions, but it goes to a diamond. Viet is really attacking midfield, McAllister's deepest, and he has Szoboszlai right and Gakpo left, and then Ekitike and Salah play like it's a diamond, and they're in there, and Bournemouth couldn't work out where we were, and we actually dominate for 2 or 3 minutes, moving the ball around. We know what we're doing, and then it just all falls apart really, really quickly. But I think that was the plan, was to do that. It was a really clear change of shape. There just wasn't much time for it, and then it's crisis.
if they've gone to a diamond, then you can understand why Endo stayed so wide, because you absolutely need your fullbacks to offer that width there. But the obvious thing in my head was, if you're asking him to play right back, get him to do the sensible thing and tuck in, almost where the fullback becomes an additional central midfielder when we're on the ball. I think you've just hung him out to dry, but I don't think it's Endo's fault. He's been asked to go on and do a job there. I don't think it's a job he'll be asked to do again under those circumstances. But there'll be plenty of opportunities for him to be decisive and shore up our midfield when we need him engaged in the future.
There's something with it, Beth, where all the way through last season, the manager in press conferences had this little thing you go back to, which will be, you talk about how many setups the opposition had and how we won't know what setup we're dealing with until X. I think actually the weekend's, Friday's game is a great example of Liverpool being really good after half time.
Yeah.
That they get to do the analysis, work out where everything is and go, okay, this is what we go to. And I thought Liverpool were great 45 to 60, really, really good. I think he wants a couple of more setups. I think he doesn't just want to play one way. And I think this sub at that moment, again, because we've just got our eye on that position in the end in analysis. But I think this sub was part of that. The issue again is, if you're going to play a diamond and your deepest line midfield is Alexis McAllister, well, he's not got that pace on the turn. No. If you've got Gravenberch, as John said before, it's a little bit different. So, but I do think he wants different setups. I do think that's part of what he's looking for at the minute. And I don't think it's just because of an attacking numbers point. I just think he wants them.
Yeah, well, I think it all comes back to, last summer when he got asked about his, which formation he played in, and he really took issue with the sort of the 4-2-3-1.
Yeah.
And he said, that's sort of not how I play. And, we saw a lot last season that was how he played. But equally, it's like, well, I think he is a manager who really values that tactical, sort of that fluidity. And I think in a way that's why, the likes of Jeremy Frimpong, bringing players like that in who can play, in different positions. I think they really value that. But I also think as well, going back to John's point earlier on about Ekitike coming off, all of this talk about, well, do Liverpool need Isak and whatever, and listen, whether it's Isak or whether it's someone else, they need another centre forward, I think, because you can't be in a position where you're, for the entirety of the season, it's okay for the odd game, but where every week, Ekitike comes off at 70 and then you're having to sort of try and make do and put square pegs into round holes. You need someone who can, share that load with him, and that doesn't always necessarily mean that Ekitike comes off or comes on. They can play. If they bring Isak in, for example, they can play alongside each other, I think, and I think we will see that if that happens. So, yeah, I think I do completely agree with you. I think he likes to have that flexibility within his squad, and I just don't think it quite worked out in the way that he envisaged.
Other thing that happens at the end of the match, mentioned before about Salah's goal and then the response to it, John, I thought the tears were really telling. I hadn't fully appreciated how deeply emotional he looked. I was, at the end of the match, I was stood up in my seat, but I obviously couldn't see his face. He's got his back to me where I was, and I couldn't see his face at that time. And I hadn't even seen it before we sort of started recording the Glen book. These lads have been through a lot, and I don't just even mean in this instance with Jota. You can spool it back years. I mean, they've had, I think that Stu's often mentioned, they had one of the teammates' parents be kidnapped in the last couple of years. When you begin to the pandemic that we all went through, Salah's had all of this whilst he's been playing for Liverpool, and we know we're an emotional club on top of that. When you sort of saw those images, in loads of ways, huge amount of credit to him for being so publicly emotionally available and moved. But it didn't have just sort of make me think, this is tough for them. It really is.
It is, yeah, and it's going to be tough for them in an ongoing way and at different times. And I think as supporters, you just want to try and support them best we can. And, you look for guidance from the players, really. You look guidance from the club on, how to sort of deal with this. I think everything's been spot on and he's been remembered and marked in a great way. But, it's tough, isn't it? Because a lot of it was around sort of Jota on Friday, and obviously with his family with there, I thought that the banner in the car saying to his family, we're here for you, was just sort of perfect, because I think that almost is the right tone. I think as fans, really, we're grieving in our own way. You're losing, one of your heroes and someone who you felt like you knew, but they did actually know him, and so I think continuing to be guided by the players and by the club, I think is so important, and letting them know we're with them, and it's all you can do. And I think that was a moment for me where, I felt like we were supporting Mo in that sort of moment, and that's what it'll be. And that support will take different forms. At some point the players might say, well, we want to sort of take a bit of not step back from it, but you know, they might not want it every week and stuff like that. And as fans, we need to listen to that and respect that, because he was their friend. But it was always going to be very emotional first game, especially with the family there and everything. And yeah, I just hope that all the players feel that, you know, as fans, you know, we're going to take the lead from them and support them best we can to hopefully come through it in the best way that you can.
It's such a difficult thing because it's almost impossible to quantify what the impact of grief is, and there's not sort of a tangible, you know, one tangible way that you know how players are struggling, and, you know, will every bad performance this season be linked to that grief and to Jota? No. But, you know, some might be in grief, you know, we know grief's not linear. There might be days and weeks that are particularly hard. There might be opponents, Wolves, for example, that are particularly hard. But I think for Mo, it just felt really cathartic for him. And that was obviously a conscious choice that he made. You know, I found that, I mean, there were so many elements of Friday night that were deeply moving. But for me, that was sort of the ultimate one, because, you know, to make that choice, and I thought it took a lot of courage for him to do that, because, you know, we speak a lot about, you know, men's mental health and men showing emotions, and you think of Mo Salah as almost being like a superhero, and I think in that moment it was just such a raw human moment that was, you know, I think that the player needed and the fans did as well. But there was a piece that went out in the Athletic on Friday. It was a really good piece. It was sort of speaking to people who knew Jota in various different ways, and there was a segment in there from a guy called Jack Walker, who works in comms at Liverpool and previously had worked in comms at Wolves as well, and he spoke about during his time at Wolves in the pandemic, he ended up playing FIFA a lot with Jota, and they spoke to each other over the headsets, as people do, and he said, you know, he didn't know, but in that period he was sort of my lifeline to the outside world and things like that. And, you know, we speak a lot about the players who are obviously going through this awful thing, but it's not just the players, it's everyone at the club, it's the people behind the scenes, it's the whole sort of mood and feeling around the club that's been so deeply affected by what's happened. And I think, you know, we do have to give a little bit of grace to these players, because it's almost impossible to imagine what they've gone through.
It was striking to me, Stu, Aktinson scores and he symbolises goes out of his way to symbolise the 20. Now, he never even played with Jota. I'm not going to say he's never met him. I don't know. Football has its own inner workings and its own inner world. He might have done. But it's more, he's come into this environment. Frimpong's come into this environment. Yeah. Van Bronckhorst's come into this environment. Yeah. These people have come in, and obviously, you know, Aktinson, when he does that, he does it with complete sincerity, in part thinking of everything else that's going on that day. You know, Liverpool, every single one of those Liverpool players, whether they'd known Diogo or not, will know that the parents of Diogo and Andre are present, and they'll know what it's meant to these other footballers that they've now began to form bonds with. And it was just striking that you can sort of try and act as though, well, the new lads will be all right. The new lads are living this every single day when they go to work.
It must have been absolutely overwhelming for them. We've seen across the football world, the players are scoring goals in different competitions and they're doing the Jota celebration. We've seen how much it's affected, you know, the entire football family globally. But I remember
Fernandes looked really upset yesterday, didn't he? He looked really upset.
When the tragedy happened for Diogo and Andre, I remember saying to my family afterwards, one of many conversations about different aspects of it, was it was just on the cusp of the players going back for pre-season, wasn't it? He was coming back. And one of the things that really struck me was that if I was one of those players, I would have been terrified of getting back to the AXA. I would have been terrified of going into that changing room, ready for training every day, and seeing the place where Diogo sat no longer being filled. And I think when you think about the new players coming into that environment as well, new players normally will go into a new football club and they'll be welcomed and it'll be fun and they might have an initiation. There'll be none of that, and they really won't have known how to handle that. It must have been incredibly difficult for them as well. I think time has passed now. It's been several weeks. They've been away for some of it, but the time has passed at the AXA where hopefully there is a return to some form of normality for the players. But on Friday night, that was only the second time that they've been in the Anfield dressing room since it happened. Diogo will still have had his spot. It may still be there. I doubt anyone's sitting in that spot.
No, they're still going to keep it this season.
I mean, that's haunting in itself for those players. Yeah. And it's the first time that it was a Premier League game where there was something at stake, and that all of those players will have felt that maybe that they weren't trying to necessarily win it for Diogo or do it for Diogo, but to do it like Diogo, do it in the way that Diogo would. Because I think I said to you last week, the one thing that Diogo Jota would have wanted to do in that game would be to win. So for all of them, it must have been incredibly overwhelming. And just, to circle back to that Salah point, Salah, I think, is quite a deep, insular person. He doesn't speak very often publicly. When he does, it has a very clear message. I think he's a bit more like himself perhaps in the dressing room, but I think he is a deep thinker about things, and to see that level of outpouring of grief on Friday, I think it just must have. I think it moved us all, didn't it? I think it brought all the emotions back up for us all.
Okay. Other thing, John, from the game is and in the end there ends up being Antoine Semenyo's statement about the abuse and the moment around that. You can make a lot of points about wider society at the minute, things that are going on, people being othered, so on and so forth. He can make those points, and I'll make them on my own social media at different times about the way things are. But all I care about in this particular instance is Liverpool. I was embarrassed and ashamed by it first and foremost. It's completely unacceptable. I liked reading Semenyo's statement, i.e. he feels as though the right steps have been taken, and that's what I worry about in this, to read it, and also it showed what a class act he was, as well as being a phenomenal footballer, frankly. So, we need to be clear, it is an element of Liverpool support, it's an element of everyone's support, and it's got to be stamped out.
Yeah, it's an element of society, and like you say, if you get 60,000 people in a space, some of them are going to have views that you don't like, and we like to think sometimes, Liverpool's fan base isn't like that.
We're not like that, yeah, it's bullshit.
But it is, because when you've got as many fans as that, then unfortunately there'll be people in that space who don't think like you do, and you like to think, even if there are those views that they're so abhorrent that people would be ashamed to say them. But unfortunately, with society maybe the way it is now, or whatever, he didn't in that moment, and felt that he could, which is depressing as well. The fact that he felt supported is good, but it is embarrassing for the club, and it is an embarrassing moment, and I think it's a reminder as well that sometimes when we judge other fan bases by individuals that we shouldn't. I thought I was away for the Palace game, but watched the Anfield Wrap afterwards, and I thought the way you all spoke about that, in particular Andy Bell, was really good, to point out that, listen, let's not all decide that Palace are like this because there's 2 or 3 dickheads in the crowd who've decided to do something, and I was pleased that Andy said that at the time, and I'm even more pleased now, because I think, it's got to work both ways. We don't all want to be judged by this individual and by this idiot. So at the same time, I think sometimes, listen, obviously when stuff's chanting en masse, that's different, but when there's individuals who ruin a minute's silence or do sort of certain things that, it's unfair of us to then judge a whole fan base or a whole city or place based on that. There is more of it, I think, that you'd sort of like, it's not quite as open as that, but, I've heard other things in football grounds in Liverpool's end. I heard it towards Trent last season when he was a Liverpool player, that was close to sort of that sort of thing, and so, we can't kid ourselves. All you can do is, I don't know what you can do sometimes, but you've got to bring it up. You can't hide away from it. That's it. I'm glad you brought it up today, because you can't just pretend that it didn't happen, because it did happen, and you've got to tackle it in some ways face on, and part of that is just being honest and saying, yeah, it is there in our society, it's there in our city, and it was there in the match on Friday.
This is the Anfield Wrap on a Monday, coming at you in a number of different ways, wherever you get your podcasts from, YouTube, as well on the video side. And there'll be shows this week, outright the way through the week, for free if you are a free listener. There'll be Rob and Mo and Tour Unwrapped, and there's other stuff as well. We want you to share it as much as possible with people who may well be into Liverpool, and we also want you to subscribe. There's loads of fantastic stuff as well that's going on behind the paywall, and there's new changes. You excited, John? You enjoyed this? A big production behind there. They'll never know, the people. They'll never know.
Just as I look left, there was a moving camera, moving on its own like magic. That it's got around.
It's the power of Ash's mind that's moving it. He's like Matilda.
If it was Ash's mind, it'd be going all over the gap. It wouldn't be as smooth as that. But no, it's part of the evolution of the Anfield Wrap. We're always thinking of the next thing. We're always trying to be better. You know, we're like on a slot, looking at everything, watching the video back, trying to sort of improve. And so I hope people, are enjoying the new visual elements. And there's loads of stuff out there for subscribers as well that's new and fresh and exciting as well. So have a dip in and see what you think.
Yeah, new shows done at different times. Did rating straight after the match, after Bournemouth, be doing it after Newcastle as well. Really enjoyed that, listening back. Had a lot of fun with that one as well. So loads of different stuff all the way through. If you've been thinking about subscribing, it is theanfieldwrap.com/subscribe, or you can do it through the app as well, audio and video if that's what you fancy. Chiesa scores the goal. And the manager's asked afterwards, can he have more of a role in the squad? I thought, given the context, the manager, I'd say, managed to palm that off a little bit more than it didn't feel like a full-throated yes, and I'll be picking him next week. That wasn't in there. What is his right place in this squad if he is to stay? Do you think he'll stay? Where do you want to see him, Beth?
I do think he'll stay, and I would like him to stay. I mean, first things first, it was an incredible finish. It was such a good finish. And again, how many goals has he scored? I know it was obviously his first Premier League goal, but he scored 3. Is that his third goal for Liverpool? So. And both of the others, great finishes as well. And I think he is a great finisher. He's a great goal scorer. And I think if he's given more opportunities, then we might see that a little bit more often. I think you do need a player who, in your forward line, who is happy to be a supporting sort of character. And I think, the indications over the last few days have been that Chiesa is happy to do that while still sort of pushing to try and get more of a look in. I think, the way that the squad have talked about him, I think Virgil van Dijk spoke about him after the game, has been just so effusive, and he just seems to be completely loved by the players, and I think they recognise that, he's had to really work hard to get to even where he is now. I think, it depends how much he is keen to agitate for a move, but the noises over the last few days suggest that he's not. And I think when you think about the fee that Liverpool will probably get for him, I think he'd be far more valuable as a player who can hopefully contribute more than he did last season, because it's almost sort of become a little bit of a joke now. And he came on, and even in the press box, I think there were some slightly raised eyebrows, like, you need a goal and you're bringing Chiesa on. But the reason Liverpool fans were so excited when he signed is because he's shown that he's got that in his locker, and I think hopefully the manager is given more opportunity to be convinced by him this season.
Is he a feasible fifth option? I'm happy with him as the sixth, and I want to come on to talk about Rio in a minute, but I think it's difficult to imagine Rio seeing time on the pitch now before the EFL Cup game. Could be wrong about that, but is he a feasible fifth option?
I think he's only a feasible fifth option if the manager's willing to start him. And I think that's the problem for me, is that he comes off the bench, he gets his goal, so he's proven himself for something, but does the manager look at that and go, actually, I could use him from the start a little bit more, or does he look at that and go, oh, he's showing...
Would have started with the City ground? Forest. Would have started with Nottingham Forest?
Yeah, I think that's the problem. I don't think... If you're saying 6 options, I think you can have your 6 as a bit of a wild card, and that can be someone you're willing to throw on for 10-15 minutes to get a goal, or it can be a youngster. So it's almost Chiesa or Rio as your sort of 6th option. For number 5, I think it needs to be someone who the manager's willing to start in certain games, either to give someone a rest or just because you've got a couple of injuries.
Yeah.
You're only 2 injuries away from your number 5 forward suddenly being in there. I think what would happen is, if we had a couple of injuries, is you try and make do elsewhere and keep Chiesa on the bench, and that's where you become a bit of an issue, really. I'm not talking now about a League Cup game where he might think, well, I'll just change everyone if we get beat, whatever. I think, I'm talking about a Premier League game or a Champions League game, really here. Is he willing to start him in one of those? If he's not, then I don't think he can be 5, because, like I said, all it takes is one player injured, another suspended because he's got 5 yellow cards.
Or we literally know Salah's going to AFCON. We literally know that's going to happen.
So you've lost one there, and so that's my worry. And for all we talk about his impact and everything else around him, it doesn't really matter what we think. It matters what the manager thinks, and I don't think he's necessarily... Listen, if we need a goal against Newcastle, he might go, well, he got me one last time and brought him on, but we do need someone who the manager's sort of willing to start. I wonder whether he'd be more likely to start Ryan Gamoa in a game in a funny sort of way than he would Chiesa, because he's backing maybe to have the legs and the energy and to sort of figure it out. You know, we can have a bad first 10 minutes and then get to grips with it if that indeed what happened. He probably wouldn't. He probably score. But I think that's sort of my concern with it all, really, and I think only the manager can answer that properly.
See, I'm speaking for me now, not for Arne Slot. I'm not the same fella. But this actually might be the one thing that in Slot's tenure at Liverpool, his glorious short tenure at Liverpool, is the one thing I'm really ready to fall out with him about. Because whether it's 5th or 6th, I think they should keep him. You look at Liverpool last season, they had 3 options at all times at centre forward, and all played the part, whether it be Diaz, Núñez or Jota. They all had a part to play. So, you know, let's say we bring in Isak. I still feel we need another fella. I think we need another experienced fella who knows where the goal is. So I would keep him. I would also, you know, going on to the wider points about forwards, I'd probably like another. But, you know...
As well as Isak, you mean?
Yeah. But maybe it's a minor point, but for me it's not. One thing that's not been spoken about enough, including, you know, today, is the game on Friday, that last 10 minutes. I know you asked Beth before, did she believe? Well, I did. I did, but maybe not in the first 10 seconds after they scored, but very quickly afterwards, because the crowd for that last 10 minutes were incredible, and largely that was singing his song. We just love to sing his song, and it gets everyone up. And I thought for the final 10 minutes, we had Bournemouth absolutely on the knees, pinned. You said it was because they were shattered. I think they were I think they'd gone, but I think they were totally overwhelmed by the atmosphere. It was akin to Dortmund a few years ago. It became a whirlwind, and it became on the back of him coming on. I mean, even in the first half, when he just got up to warm up, it lifted the crowd. And I think when you're talking about what kind of value it would be to sell him versus keep him, I actually don't think you can put a price on that, on the impact that has on the atmosphere. But I mean, that almost underplays his value as well. I think he's a very capable player. Maybe he's not the player he was, you know, 3 years ago when he was a lot fitter and faster. But to do a job at centre forward and knows where the goal is, I think keep him. After Friday night, make him club president. Lifetime contract, because I am here for those nights and for those moments. And the more I get to sing his song after moments like that, the happier I am.
There is a thing, isn't there, where the managers, you know, for his options, Doku's now literally gone to Bournemouth. Liverpool got a good price for him. It just becomes difficult to imagine seeing Rio before the EFL Cup game now. I think I would have thought we'd have seen him come on in the Shield, or possibly when this pressure was on. Could be proven completely wrong. Arne Slot's his own man and he makes his own choices. But I just sort of can't quite see where the game is. I certainly can't see him being introduced against Arsenal, for God's sake. You know, you begin to sort of process that through, and that's fine. I trust Liverpool with the development of the players. I trust them with player care. They've made that call. I very much expect them to play that EFL Cup game from the start. But it is difficult to see that, and I think therefore, to John's point about Chiesa, which I think is a really valid one, if you're not going to start him, you can't say he's one of your main options. If you're not going to start him in a league game, you can't say he's one of your main options, and I think that goes for Rio and for Chiesa.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm surprised we've not seen a little bit more of Rio over the past couple of weeks, certainly in the Community Shield when you look at the pre-season that he had. But like you say, you know, you've got to trust that the club are being guided by everything behind the scenes, the sports science, and you know, you'd much rather they protect a young player than throw him in at the deep end. And listen, it might be that at some point in the season, Slot's hand is forced a little bit, and he has to blood Rio maybe in a way that it isn't in his plans right now. I think the one thing that I do take the guy's point, I think in an ideal world, Liverpool bring in two attacking players. Whether they will, I'm not sure, but I think that the one thing that gives you a little bit of leeway is that you've got Florian Wirtz, who can play, not in an ideal world, but he's an option, and I think he's an option that we will see playing in that forward line at some point throughout the season. Dominic Szoboszlai, we saw last season, was playing almost in a front two. Curtis Jones as well in that sort of... was it Aston Villa when he plays them?
It's like 4-4-2-0 or 4-2-4-0.
So again, you know, you can look at it and say, well, you shouldn't be thinking about emergency options, and in an ideal world you would bring two in. But I do think that Liverpool have enough leeway that if they bring another striker or another forward in, then I think if you keep Chiesa around, and the thing is, you know, the manager obviously sees him every day in training, and he's not just not playing in for laughs. You know, he knows And I think he knows the perception that people have about him and Chiesa, because he got asked a few questions about him on Friday night, and he mentioned, he got asked sort of what is it that makes the fans love him, and he mentioned the song, and then he laughed and he said, I think I'm probably doing him a disservice by saying that. So I think he knows. But I think that the flashes that we've seen of him, you know, have largely been quite positive. You know, you can argue whether he took his chance when he did start that league game. Was it away at Brighton he starts?
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe didn't quite look up to it. But I don't know. I just feel like I think he's a player to keep around.
Just on Isak then, we're talking about him. He's not a Liverpool player. He won't be a Liverpool player before player registration forms go in, I think, against Newcastle. Wouldn't surprise me if it is going to happen, if it does actually speed up Newcastle. I think signing Jacob Ramsey shows that they're thinking about this thing a little bit differently at this point. But he shouldn't. At this point, listen, I think that if football's rational, Isak, when he plays his last game last season, all the Newcastle supporters know it. Everything happens in June. Newcastle get a really good replacement in for him. Isak with Liverpool for pre-season, that replacement, but that's not what's happening now. So right now, if you're Newcastle, I want to be really clear. I couldn't agree more with their decision to say to Liverpool, there's no way you're getting him before you play us. That is absolutely what Newcastle should be doing, and therefore I think that's the way it's going to play out.
I mean, that's what we're hoping, isn't it? That's what we're anticipating, that maybe that's what the diddle is here. Wait till we've played them. I mean, you just got to hope that that's how it turns out, because no doubt we need another one. We absolutely need another one, and yeah, it'd be really exciting. I'm starting to have a growing feeling that it's not going to happen, and I was adamant that it was going to happen a few days ago.
Really, because I've flipped. Ramsey's made me flip. I was increasingly thinking they'll end up not getting what they need in, not getting a replacement. So it's Ramsey that's made me flip. So what's made you feel?
I just think, with all due respect, I think it's the stupidity of them leaving it so late in the window that they can't make the moves with the money that they'll have. I mean, the PSR thing opens wide, it's wide open for them once they do that deal. And, they're so limited by wages, never mind transfer fees at the moment. But all of that goes. I think if they do that deal... I think that this is, you are literally regurgitating many an argument I've had with Ron. I think the wages thing is actually a bit of a misnomer, because I think they want to keep a wage structure. Because if you bring X in on God knows how much, you will have, within seconds, Guimaraes, Gordon. Yeah. You'll have all these lads knocking on the door going, why is he earning twice as much as me? I think the idea of throwing money at them, like in a really weird way, United, because they're badly run, it's easy for them to throw money into a problem. They can just decide, because the wage structure's fucked anyway, well, we might as well. I think if you're Newcastle, I take the PSR point in general, and it comes around, but I think the one thing you don't want is to buy a player, and it's going to cause tons and tons of issues with other existing players who are all going, well, what am I, chopped liver? We just won the first trophy that we've won in 70 years, lads. We got you to the Champions League. Can I have the money as well? I mean, I hope you're right. I hope you're right, because, we're desperate to see him in a Liverpool shirt. Maybe it's just because it's getting closer and closer now, and I'm getting a little bit nervous. And I'm getting a little nervous as well as what are Liverpool's other plans here, because are they willing to wait like they did for Van Dijk so many years ago? Are they willing to wait for the one, and maybe it's a January, but we've got to navigate through August to Christmas, and with one centre forward potentially. And, there's a lot that happens there's a lot of points at stake between now and Christmas, and there's a title to be won here. So I am increasingly nervous, but I'm also clear on the fact that I don't just want him or a centre forward. I think we need another forward option, and what I'm hoping is that Liverpool are also I hope that Liverpool are leaving it late in the window to get the other forward, because they're looking at a potential loan to buy deal by someone who hasn't been able to get rid of a player like a Rodrigo. That'd be great. I'd love to be able to get on the last day. It's announced we get a season-long loan with Rodrigo with its compulsory buy option at the end of the year. Fantastic. So I'm hoping that's what Liverpool's moves are, but maybe I'm just getting a bit carried away.
How do you feel about Isak?
I think it'll come. Yeah, I think it'll happen. I think there's a lot of people trying to say at the moment, there's this player who wants to leave, and then they got sorted and stuff like that. But I haven't known anyone for it to be quite as projected as this in terms of the relationship with the ongoing club. I'm not even sure he's in the city. You know what I mean? Never mind at the training ground.
He's doing weekend today later with you.
Well, I hope he watched enough games. That's all I'd say. No passengers. So I think, it just seems so beyond the point of return. And even now, when you speak to when you hear the manager talking stuff like that, he's talking about replacements. You know, he's talking about getting a forward in. He's talking like he hasn't got one.
Yeah.
So which he hasn't effectively. You know, the fella's sort of not there, and so there isn't even a pretense out of anyone who's public facing from Newcastle that there's, you know, that he is even a Newcastle player. You know, he's a Newcastle player in registration only, I feel like, at the moment. So are they just waiting to get the players in, or are they waiting just to get to the other side of the Liverpool game? I think it probably is a little bit more of that, really, because the idea of him coming there, the only thing that worries you is that you know, how you know, when there's someone above, you know, the management or sporting director just goes, nah, this isn't happening, and we'll just burn the place down. That's your sort of concern, and obviously you're so keen for it, and then I understand people's nerves when he's sort of not here, but I think it gets done, and then we go, oh yeah, well that was always going to happen. Do you know what I mean? And like a week later, it's sort of broadly forgotten about outside some angry Geordies, which I get.
100%. I think gay interesting at the weekend. Do you think that happens?
Yeah, I think it does. I think as much as there has been talk, you know, the club don't want to be lowballed, and you know they will want to strike a good deal. And there's obviously been a lot of talk as well. Gay's happy to see out his contract, and the club are happy to keep him. But you know, the chairman literally came out last week and basically said it's not an option that he goes for free.
Yeah.
So the other option is that he signs a new contract, which won't happen. It was interesting. There was that clip at the end of the game yesterday where him and Glasner looked to have a little bit of a not a spat even, but just a little bit of something. That might be something and nothing. And you know, credit, and I'm sure the Newcastle fans will say credit to him, because despite all that speculation, he goes and he plays, and yeah, he played well. So yeah, I think it does happen. I think the talks are still ongoing. I think if Liverpool had been, you know, weren't interested in paying the money, they'd have walked away by now, and they've not. So.
I think the reason why I think it happens, and I think it happens maybe a teeny bit more on Palace's terms than people might think, I think it's because I think Liverpool want an ongoing relationship with Palace. You've got Wharton in the middle of the park, Liverpool will link early in the season to Mateta. Palace have produced Eze. You know, I'm not saying Liverpool want to buy Eze, that's not my point. My point is you can look at Palace as a club where there's an intensity about it, there's an emotion about it. Good players go there, if good players show themselves, I think Liverpool will want the ongoing relationship with Crystal Palace.
Completely agree with that. I think Liverpool have very much got an eye on Wharton 2026. Hashtag. I think that for me that is the sensible move next summer. You know, the one big move that we do next summer. Really, I think he'd be a great addition to our midfield. So yeah, I do think that Liverpool want to make sure that they treat Palace with respect.
Yeah.
And forge those good relationships. And I think Gay will come in and I think he'll do a really good job for Liverpool. I think he's a very steady, calm presence, which Liverpool's defence can at times, without Van Dijk, look anything but steady and calm. All very good players in their own right, but you wouldn't necessarily say, you know, any of them particularly have calm heads, and including Robertson in that. We've all seen him, and I love him for it. But we you know, I think they need someone in there who is actually going to be a bit of a leader, and someone who's going to talk people through games.
Any other business? Wheel cells?
No, I think that's...
covered everything that you could do this Monday?
I think so.
Excellent stuff. Shows all week. Tomorrow you've got Rob and Mo. Wednesday will be Tour Unwrapped as well. And in the meantime as well, things like Trent with Josh Williams happening today for subscribers. Weekend that John's doing, looking back on the weekend before the big one tonight when Leeds United entertain Everton. So we're going to be premature there on that one, but we'll all see how we are as we go all the way through.
Plenty of time to talk about Everton.
Yeah, there is indeed. For subscribers tomorrow as well, there'll be a gutter that's out, audio and video. Should have the new set behind Rob as well. You should enjoy that one, see if he does as well. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks to everyone. There's Andy who's looking after the sounds for this one, and there's three people, Milo, Patrick and Ash, who've all been looking after the images all the way through. Or the start of the show is the tracking wide. Thank you very much indeed, Stu, John and Beth. It has been the Anfield Wrap. New season, new us, same champions.